Forrest Gump is a film filled with heart, history, and unforgettable moments. But behind the camera lies a story just as remarkable. These are the untold stories that shaped a cinematic legend.
You're the same as everybody else.
Fact 1. When Forrest Gump went over budget during production, Paramount considered shutting it down. Director Robert Zemeckis and star Tom Hanks believed in the project so strongly, they offered to give back part of their salaries. Hanks agreed to forgo his usual upfront fee in exchange for a percentage of the film's profits. This decision ended up earning him over $60 million, far more than his original fee. The scene where Forrest runs across America was one of the most expensive to shoot. Paramount didn't want to pay for it, so Zemeckis and Hanks split the cost themselves. Hanks later said, "If we're going to make the movie we want to make, we have to put our money where our mouth is." It was a gamble, but it paid off. The running scenes became some of the most iconic in the film. They were shot across 18 states over multiple weeks. Hanks wore different sneakers and had body doubles for wide shots, including his brother Jim. But in close-ups, it was all him. The studio eventually reimbursed some costs after seeing early cuts. Hanks and Zemeckis never made a public fuss about it. They just wanted the movie done right. This sacrifice helped preserve the film's tone and scope. Without it, Forrest may have never taken that long, unforgettable run, and the world would have lost one of the film's most quietly powerful sequences. Fact 2. The bench where Forrest delivers his famous line,
"My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates,"
has become iconic, but it was never a real part of the Savannah, Georgia park where it appeared. The bench was a prop, brought in and bolted to a sidewalk near Chippewa Square. Tourists still visit the location today, but the bench itself is long gone. It was moved to a museum to protect it from weather and vandalism. During filming, the area was heavily controlled to prevent crowd interference. Tom Hanks filmed those scenes over several days under brutal heat. He wore the same beige suit the entire time, often soaked in sweat between takes. The chocolate box changed depending on camera angle. Some were hollowed for props, others fully detailed. The crew rehearsed every delivery of the line because it became the emotional anchor of the movie. What seems like a peaceful, simple moment was meticulously crafted. Most of the people sitting next to Forrest in the sequence were cast locals and extras. Some weren't actors at all, just willing to listen. The storytelling style influenced decades of future films. Morgan Freeman once cited it as a perfect use of narration, but the magic of the bench came from its stillness in the middle of Forrest's chaotic life. It was a stage, a confessional, and a podium all in one. And it never actually belonged to that square. It belonged to the story. Fact 3.
"Think I'll go home now."
In wide-angle running shots, it's often not Tom Hanks you're seeing, it's his younger brother Jim. Jim Hanks is a professional actor and voiceover artist who closely resembles his brother in profile and motion. When long-distance shots or physical stunts were needed, Jim stepped in to run as Forrest. This kept the production moving and reduced the physical strain on Tom. Jim trained specifically to match Forrest's posture, gait, and running style. He also provided voiceover work for Forrest-related projects years later. The decision to use Jim saved the production time and money. Tom has joked in interviews that Jim did the hard parts. Audiences rarely noticed the switch because of clever editing and matching costumes. The technique was so effective, it was later adopted in other films. Jim's contribution remained mostly behind the scenes, but the crew praised him for his work ethic. He helped film sequences shot across the U.S., including Utah, Montana, and Arizona. The run took weeks to complete, with Jim sometimes doing 10 to 12 miles of footage a day. He never appeared in the credits. Just like Forrest, he ran quietly in the background. In interviews, Jim said he was proud to be part of something so meaningful. The brothers didn't make it a marketing point, they just did what needed to be done. And thanks to Jim, the movie's most physically demanding moments stayed seamless and iconic. Fact 4.
How many roads must a man walk down?
In the scene where Jenny performs "Blowin' in the Wind" in a strip club, Robin Wright was battling a high fever. She was suffering from a bad case of the flu during shooting, but refused to delay production. Wright insisted on performing her scenes as scheduled to avoid affecting the filming timeline. She sang live for the scene, with no overdubs, despite her condition. Director Robert Zemeckis considered postponing the shoot, but was convinced by Wright's determination. Her weakened, shaky vocals added authenticity to the performance. Jenny's fragility in that moment wasn't just acting, it was real. The club was a closed set with minimal crew to help Wright focus. She wore a skin-colored bodysuit beneath her guitar to maintain modesty. The tension and discomfort seen on her face were completely genuine. Wright's performance added raw humanity to a moment that could have felt artificial. She later said the scene was one of the most emotionally vulnerable of her career. Zemeckis praised her professionalism and resilience, calling it incredibly brave. This moment ended up being one of Jenny's most haunting scenes. It captured her loneliness and detachment with brutal realism. The lighting and sound were kept intentionally cold to reflect Jenny's isolation. Few viewers know how sick Wright actually was during the shoot, but that illness became part of the performance, and it helped make Jenny's journey feel all the more tragic. Fact 5.
I got it. Hey.
I believe he said he had to go pee.
Many of the film's most jaw-dropping moments relied on groundbreaking visual effects. Forrest shaking hands with JFK, standing next to John Lennon, or speaking on talk shows. All of it was created using digital trickery. The team at Industrial Light and Magic used actual archival footage and inserted Tom Hanks with seamless precision. They reanimated lip movements of historical figures to match the script using early digital compositing. It was one of the first mainstream films to use CGI in a dramatic, not sci-fi or fantasy context. For scenes involving amputee veteran Lieutenant Dan, actor Gary Sinise wore blue stockings over his legs. These were digitally erased in post-production to make it appear as if his legs were missing. The effect was so convincing that many viewers assumed Sinise was an amputee. The team used matte painting, motion tracking, and rotoscoping, all by hand, frame by frame. The running sequences with digitally aged backgrounds required precise camera, matching, and environmental adjustments. The team used new layering software that helped combine real footage with recreated settings. In Vietnam battle scenes, CGI was used to enhance explosions and create depth in jungle shots. The effects were subtle but revolutionary, because the magic wasn't in what you saw, it was in what you didn't realize you were seeing. The film won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects in 1995. Many of the techniques developed were later used in Titanic and Saving Private Ryan. The seamless blending of history and fiction wouldn't have worked without this innovation. And today, Forrest Gump is still taught in film schools for its visual mastery. Fact 6.
You still Lieutenant Dan.
Gary Sinise's portrayal of Lieutenant Dan had a lasting impact far beyond the screen. Moved by his character's journey, Sinise became a tireless advocate for real-life veterans. He formed the Gary Sinise Foundation in 2011 to support wounded warriors and their families. His foundation builds smart homes for disabled vets, funds rehabilitation, and hosts morale-boosting events. The idea came directly from his time portraying a veteran struggling with identity and purpose. He joined the USO and began visiting troops across the world, sometimes even in war zones. Sinise also formed the Lieutenant Dan Band, performing at military bases and veteran hospitals. He said that playing Dan opened his eyes to the real sacrifices service members make. Veterans responded deeply to his portrayal, saying it captured something honest and painful. Sinise has won numerous awards for his humanitarian efforts, including the Presidential Citizens Medal. He's written a book about his journey from actor to advocate. Many of the programs his foundation funds were inspired by stories he heard from veterans who connected with the film. The organization has raised millions and continues to grow. His commitment has lasted decades, long after the credits rolled. Sinise's transformation is one of the most powerful legacies any actor has carried from a role. In many ways, he became the real-life version of what Lieutenant Dan needed, and what started as a role became a mission. It's rare for fiction to inspire real change, but in this case, it built homes, hope, and healing. Fact 7.
How would you like to go into the shrimping business with me?
In the film, Forrest fulfills his promise to Bubba by launching a shrimping business. Bubba Gump Shrimp Co. What started as a fictional company became real after the film's release. In 1996, Paramount Pictures and Viacom partnered with restaurant developers to create the first Bubba Gump restaurant in Monterey, California. It was the first movie-based restaurant brand ever launched by a major studio. The menu focused on, of course, shrimp in every form imaginable. The decor was designed to mimic scenes from the movie, down to Forrest's bench and running shoes. Each table includes trivia cards and Forrest Gump quotes. The restaurants were surprisingly successful and soon opened worldwide. By 2010, there were more than 30 locations globally, including in Asia and the UK. Tom Hanks visited the original location and gave it his blessing. Though he had no financial involvement, his endorsement helped cement the brand's appeal. The company even created charity partnerships for veteran support in honor of the film's themes. You can still order Lieutenant Dan's Surf and Turf and Run Across America sampler today. Even the waitstaff shout, "Run, Forrest, run," when delivering food. The restaurant became one of the most unexpected outcomes of a dramatic film, and it remains the only major restaurant chain born directly from a movie about friendship and shrimp. Fact 8.
My mom always told me that miracles happen every day.
Michael Connor Humphreys, who played young Forrest, had no prior acting experience before being cast. He auditioned in Mississippi and had a naturally thick Southern accent. Director Robert Zemeckis and Tom Hanks were so charmed by Humphreys' voice that they decided to build Forrest's adult speech pattern around it. Instead of teaching Humphreys to sound like Hanks, Hanks learned to mimic him. Hanks studied recordings of Humphreys' line deliveries and worked them into his own performance. This reversal of the usual process is rare in film, especially for major roles. Hanks has said it was the best creative decision they made during production. It gave Forrest's speech a grounded, authentic feel that couldn't have been manufactured. Humphreys' drawl became the voice of an icon. The young actor was unaware of the impact his natural voice would have. He later served in the U.S. Army and largely stepped away from acting. Despite having only one major film credit, he remains a fan favorite. When interviewed years later, he still spoke in the same cadence that inspired Hanks. Hanks credited Humphreys with unlocking the rhythm of the character. It was Forrest's voice, slow, sincere, and gentle, that helped define the film's emotional core. The decision gave Forrest his innocence and made his words feel poetic. Critics praised the choice as subtle but genius, and it all started with a boy from Mississippi just speaking the way he always had. Sometimes the most iconic voices come from being yourself. Fact 9. While the film's Vietnam War scenes feel convincingly exotic, they were actually shot in South Carolina. Specifically, locations around Hunting Island and Fripp Island stood in for the Vietnamese jungle. The production transformed the American coast into Southeast Asia using palm trees, fog machines, and clever set design. They brought in hundreds of gallons of fake rain and built trenches and jungle brush from scratch. Helicopter flyovers and pyrotechnics were added digitally or during second unit filming. The swamp scenes were some of the most grueling to shoot. Cast and crew had to contend with heat, bugs, and long shooting days. Gary Sinise wore a harness for much of the shoot to simulate Lieutenant Dan's injuries. The beach scenes with Forrest rescuing soldiers were all filmed on American soil. Even the shot of napalm strikes was a visual effect added in post-production. Despite not leaving the U.S., the authenticity fooled nearly everyone. The area became a minor tourist attraction after the film's release. Visitors today still ask locals to show them the Vietnam beach. Set dressers used thousands of fake plants and mud to transform the landscape. No one expected South Carolina to stand in for a war zone, but it worked. That transformation is part of the movie's magic. By shooting locally, the team saved money and stayed safe. And it proved you don't need to go around the world to bring a story to life. Just a little vision and a lot of mud. Fact 10.
Why are you so good to me?
You're my girl.
Before Tom Hanks was cast, the role of Forrest Gump was offered to several other A-list actors. John Travolta turned it down, later calling it a huge mistake. Bill Murray and Chevy Chase were also considered, though both passed on the script. Each actor had a different take on how Forrest would be portrayed. Travolta's version would have leaned more into comedy. Producers were also unsure about the film's tone. Was it satire, drama, or fantasy? Even the studio had doubts about its box office potential. The original script was longer, more episodic, and included scenes that never made the final cut. One of those scenes featured Forrest meeting Martin Luther King Jr. It was scrapped for pacing. At one point, there were talks of making it an ensemble piece instead of focusing solely on Forrest. Robert Zemeckis stepped in and streamlined the narrative, focusing on Forrest's journey through key moments in American history. Once Tom Hanks signed on, everything changed. He committed fully and helped shape the emotional core of the character. The tone settled into something unique, emotionally rich, yet lightly surreal. Hanks's quiet performance gave the film balance and believability. The role eventually earned him his second consecutive Oscar. What could have been a quirky, scattered comedy became one of cinema's most beloved dramas. It was a film shaped by chance, instinct, and perfect casting. And it all started with a script that almost got shelved.